This is very, very strange. I was staying in the Lincoln bedroom last night, and I couldn't resist getting on the phone, and I called up the Secret Service as the president. Feel like going jogging tonight? In the nude. My wife and I were looking out on the lawn around midnight, and these guys were fully unclothed. Well, it's good to have... I've been studying him since yesterday, and I think I've actually... The way to do the president is to start out with Mr. Rogers. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Then you add a little John Wayne. Here we go, let's go over the ridge. You put them together, you got George Herbert Walker Bush.
Comedian Dana Carvey, December 7th, 1992. A surprise appearance at the White House. President Bush's staff were in the room, President Bush was in the room, and Dana Carvey did his famous impression of President Bush.
Not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent at this juncture. That was the other one. Wouldn't be prudent at this juncture. That thing, doing that thing. Now, I always did this thing. I always said that the president goes, it's bad, it's bad. But you only did it once. I did it for 4 years. He did it once, so. I don't know. Do you want to come on up, or?
And with Dana Carvey's urging, President Bush, who had just lost re-election, did come on up.
Don't dare move my hands. What I want to do. No, but I am very grateful to Dana and to Paula for being here. And Dana's given me a lot of laughs. He said to me on the phone, "You sure you really want me to come there?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I hope I've never crossed the line." And I knew exactly what he meant, and as far as I'm concerned, he never has. And the fact that we can laugh at each other is a very fundamental thing. I'm not sure on November 4th that the invitation would have gone out and had the same enthusiasm, but we're shifting gears, and I think he's given us a wonderful kickoff to what I hope will be a joyous, totally friendly, very happy, somewhat nostalgic, but Merry Christmas for everybody.
Now, 33 years later, we're still talking about politicians and their relationships with comedians who make fun of them. So in this episode of C-SPAN's podcast, Extreme Mortman, we remember when a comedian did an impression of a president, and a president did an impression of the comedian doing an impression of the president, and both loved it. What did that sound like? Find out in Extreme Mortman.
Even in the gloom of the 1992 loss, a few days after the election, all of the White House staff officers got a message. The president has invited you to an important meeting in the East Room of the White House. So we all assembled at the appointed time, and an offstage announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the president and Mrs. Bush." And then in walked Dana Carvey, impersonating Bush, holding Mrs. Bush's hands, waving his way into the East Room and up onto the dais. President Bush strolled in, laughing hysterically behind the pair. President Bush and Dana Carvey then outdid each other, imitating President Bush's quirky, funny mannerisms. It brightened the spirits of those loyal White House staffers in the face of a historic presidential campaign loss.
That was Arkansas Republican Congressman French Hill, June 11th, 2024, honoring President George H.W. Bush on what would have been, the next day, his 100th birthday. French Hill worked for President Bush. He was Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury and later coordinated all White House economic policy. Also in the East Room of the White House with Dana Carvey that December 1992 day, and on stage, First Lady Barbara Bush. During a November 2012 discussion at the LBJ Library, Barbara Bush gave behind-the-scenes color.
The whole White House was so sad and glum, and of course they're looking for jobs. They've all been fired by the vote, and they were just so dreary. So he asked Dana Carvey, and we hid him in the White House. We took him to the Kennedy Center Honors, but we hid him. Nobody knew he was staying at the White House. So when, he's an itty-bitty little guy. And when we gathered all the White House staff in the big East Room, and then they went, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, and this itty-bitty little guy walks in. And he was funny, and he was very cute, and George imitated him, and he imitated George, and anyway, it raised the level of feeling, and it made a difference.
During an April 28, 1999 Republican fundraiser, George Bush also remembered that day with Dana Carvey.
I helped the joke industry, Jay Leno. And I might tell you there's another guy that misses me, Dana Carvey. It's amazing. I tell you what I really thought about that little guy, but not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Remember him? You remember that guy? He's got to miss me.
Then George Bush shared these memories.
I remember when we lost the election, and it hurts. One or two of you guys in this room, one or two, you know what that means. And we were down, and we were discouraged, and I invited Dana Carvey to come to the White House, because though he had needled me mercilessly for 4 years, he's a really decent fella, and he came to the White House, and he slept for free in the Lincoln bedroom, we get downstairs, and I had trouble convincing the Marines, who were so wonderful. It's one of the things I miss is our great military. I was so proud to be their commander-in-chief. And I had trouble convincing them, but one of them did it anyway. He said, now, ladies, and we had all the guys we could crowd in, the men and women of our staff, crowd them into that East Wing to kind of lift their morale. And the Marine, at my request, going against his better judgment, said, and now, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. And in walks Dana Carvey, strides to the mic, talks about how the Secret Service beat him up for stealing a pen that belonged to Andrew Johnson. But he lifted the spirits of our place, and I will always be grateful to him.
During that 1992 joint appearance at the White House, George Bush imitated Dana Carvey's hand gestures, but he didn't imitate the catchphrases and syntax. He did that many other times, though. The earliest recorded public instance of President Bush citing Dana Carvey, August 2nd, 1991, the end of a press conference in the Rose Garden on the first anniversary of Iraq's attack on Kuwait. It wasn't yet a fully formed impression.
Listen, thanks. I hope you all get a little chance for a vacation. I'll be here for go to Camp David today. I'll be back. I'm not trying to be like Dana Carvey here, but I'm going to be Monday and Tuesday.
A bit more impression next month, September 27th, 1991. President Bush mentions Dana Carvey again. It was the end of a photo op with reporters in the cabinet room.
Will there be any savings for taxpayers as a result of your proposal?
You misunderstood what I said, Terry. I said I don't want to take any more questions on it.
Put
me down as determined.
Nomination is in danger.
Determined. Dana Carvey. Determined.
Then, after his presidency, that's when George Bush's impression of Dana Carvey's impression of George Bush really took off. Like on November 3rd, 1996, George Bush campaigning for the next Republican nominee for president, Bob Dole. George Bush spoke after fellow former President Gerald Ford.
And then I come here to Ohio. I had it all written out, everything. And then my friend, yours, Jerry Ford, gets up here and gives that eloquent reason why we should all be for Bob Dole. It isn't fair. Life is not fair. I tell you what I really think about the batting order, but as Dana Carvey was saying, not going to do it. It would be prudent, you know. crazy little Dana Carvey. I made millions for him, and now he's unemployed, you know.
Dana Carvey connected George Bush with Gerald Ford another time, January 2nd, 2007, at the Washington National Cathedral. It was the funeral service for Gerald Ford, and George Bush gave a eulogy.
He had a wonderful sense of humor, and even took it in stride when Chevy Chase had to make the entire world think that this terrific, beautifully coordinated athlete was actually a stumbler. But Ford says it was funny. He wrote that in his memoir. I remember that lesson well, since being able to laugh at yourself is essential in public life. I'd tell you more about that, but as Dana Carvey would say, not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent.
Think a state funeral at the National Cathedral is a unique, if not unlikely, place to do a Dana Carvey impression? Well, consider some of the other venues where the impression showed up, like the Central Intelligence Agency. George Bush served as CIA director from 1976 to 1977. In September 1997, he spoke at a ceremony commemorating the CIA's 50th anniversary.
And so to those who say we no longer need CIA, I say you're nuts. And those who want to dismantle CIA or put it under some other department, State Department or anybody else, you're nuts too. And to those who feel the right to know takes precedence over legitimate classification of documents or over protecting our most precious asset, our people, same to you. You're nuts, and so's the horse you came in on. And I would tell you what I really thought about all this, but as Dana Carvey would say, not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Not gonna do it.
And October 6, 1999, a bookstore in Connecticut. George Bush is talking about All the Best, his collection of letters, memos, and diary entries to friends and family.
Much to the dismay of my very talented editor, that would be Lisa Drew of Scribner's, who's here today, I'm not doing a book tour. As Dana Carvey would say, not gonna do it. And wouldn't be prudent, actually.
And a February 19th, 1998 speech to the Minnesota Family Council.
I miss some things about my former job, and I don't miss others. I don't miss the national press. That may come as a surprise to you. I haven't asked Rod his views on him, but if he gave me his, I would then give you mine, and I'd tell you what I really think about the national press. But as my dear friend Dana Carvey would say, not going to do it, wouldn't be prudent. So that little guy's got to miss me, don't you think? I mean...
On January 13th, 2000, George Bush addressed the Greater Des Moines Chamber of Commerce. Yes, he did the impression, but more notably, it was a nonpartisan speech that happened to be held shortly before the Republican presidential caucuses in Iowa. That year, his son was a contestant.
It's a political time of the year, and I understand the ground rules, and I will try not to offend, go across the line between politics and non-politics. I'm going to abide by the Dana Carvey principle. That means that though you hold your caucuses in 11 days, and though I might be tempted to utter a few words of encouragement to anyone who is considering supporting my boy, I will heed the immortal words of Dana Carvey, not gonna do it, wouldn't be prudent. You know, remember that guy? You remember Dana Carvey? The guy, a lot of guys don't miss me in Washington, but there's one guy who does, I'll tell you.
A historical footnote, George W. Bush won the 2000 Iowa caucuses, just like his father did in 1980. George H.W. Bush said something similar 2 years later, May 18, 2002, giving the commencement address at the University of Texas LBJ School of Public Affairs.
I want to resist as a nonpartisan gathering here. I understand that. And as the father of the governor of the state of Florida, and indeed now of the President of the United States, I'd like to tell you about their programs. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to assert the Dana Carvey principle. Not got to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. You remember him? Remember Dana Carvey? Yeah. All right, I'm telling you something. You know, a lot of guys don't miss me in Washington, but there's one guy that does, Dana Carvey, I'll tell you.
In June 1999, George Bush spoke to a free trade conference sponsored by the McGill Institute for the Study of Canada. He remembered the battle over NAFTA and Ross Perot.
It was a passion-filled debate, and at times a rhetorical barrage coming from the opposition, both on Capitol Hill and around the country, got a little out of hand. One prominent American, I prefer to leave him nameless, went so far as to predict there would be a giant sucking sound. You know who I mean, don't you? I tell you what I really thought about him, but as Dana Carvey would say, wouldn't be prudent, not going to do it. Remember Dana Carvey? Hey. There's one guy that misses me. A lot of them around Washington don't, but Dana Carvey. The guy made a fortune off of ridiculing me. But anyway, here we go.
By the way, speaking of Ross Perot, Dana Carvey also did an equally legendary impression of him, which Ross Perot alluded to during a November 1st, 1992 presidential campaign rally in Long Beach, California. Ross Perot was previewing live TV airtime he bought the following night, $3 million for 2 hours of television time across multiple networks, including ABC, CBS, and NBC.
Do you have any idea how much the two parties must hate live television right now? Now, if you like Saturday Night Live, I can't wait for you to see Monday Night Live tomorrow night. Now, since we're on all three channels, Dana Carvey will be standing in for me, but you won't know the difference. It'll work, okay?
We've heard all these impressions of George Bush, doing impressions of Dana Carvey, doing impressions of George Bush. Now let's add one more layer. Members of Congress doing the same impression. From the Senate floor on September 9th, 2014, here's Republican from Texas, Ted Cruz.
I grew up watching Saturday Night Live. I love Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live over the years has had some of the most tremendous political satire for decades. Who can forget Chevy Chase tripping and falling over just about everything? Who can forget portrayals Dana Carvey's George Herbert Walker Bush? Not gonna do it.
And here's Republican Congressman from California, Doug LaMalfa, December 10th, 2018, remembering George Bush shortly after he died.
He had a sense of humor. You saw it in his son, George W., as well, and you see it all the time. But he could take a joke and give one out. And I just always, one of my favorite things would be him interacting with Dana Carvey on the Saturday Night Live skits there, and him playing along because he saw the fun in it. He saw the humor in it when people chalked him up as a combination of John Wayne and Mr. Rogers, and how he carried himself, and the whole Nagada thing that he interacted with Dana Carvey, and it just showed a well-rounded, great man this man was and is.
George Bush died on November 30th, 2018. 3 months later, on February 19th, 2019, at a program hosted by the George W. Bush Presidential Center, he was remembered by his longtime friend, James Baker.
Talk about the decision not to go to Baghdad. Prudence is something that he was known for. I understand we're going to get a view of that here when Dana Carvey might come on, but I love the way Dana used to imitate him. Said, "No, not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent." But he was prudent.
And that memory from James Baker leads to the big question. Did George Bush actually use the word prudent? Yes, many, many times, like when he announced his candidacy for president, October 12, 1987.
And what is the proper attitude toward the Soviets as we pursue progress? Praise God and keep your guard up. There are those who say that all's well, all's fine, everything's changed over there. And maybe they're right, and maybe they're wrong. And history will tell. And as we wait for history to render judgment, a prudent skepticism is in order.
And accepting the nomination for president at the 1988 Republican Convention.
The tremors in the Soviet world continue. The hard earth there has not yet settled. Perhaps what is happening will change our world forever, and perhaps not. A prudent skepticism is in order, and so is hope.
And his 1989 inauguration speech.
We will make the hard choices, looking at what we have, perhaps allocating it differently, making our decisions based on honest need and prudent safety.
And his January 28, 1992 State of the Union address.
Much good can come from the prudent use of power, and much good can come of this. A world once divided into two armed camps now recognizes one sole and preeminent power, the United States of America.
And again in his 1992 State of the Union address.
I pride myself that I'm a prudent man, and I believe that patience is a virtue, but I understand that politics is for some a game, and that sometimes the game is to stop all progress and then decry the lack of improvement.
That would be President Bush's final State of the Union address. But a Democratic congressman from Texas noticed something else about that speech. From February 25th, 1992, here's Martin Frost.
Mr. Speaker, when I was sitting here in the House chamber several weeks ago, listening to President Bush deliver his State of the Union, I looked up at the rostrum and a funny thing happened. I didn't see George Bush. All I could see was Dana Carvey, the fellow who portrays him on Saturday Night Live.
And now, a bonus clip. A week after Dana Carvey's legendary surprise appearance at the White House, another comedian showed up. This time, though, very much no surprise. And this time, no jokes from the comedian. On December 11th, 1992, George Bush awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Johnny Carson. But Dana Carvey, who did a pretty brutal impression of Johnny Carson, was still very much on President Bush's mind.
To much of America, Johnny Carson was late-night TV. And with decency and style, he's made America laugh and think. And Johnny, I don't care what you say, I still think Dana Carvey does a better impersonation of you than he does of me.
One footnote to Dana Carvey, his appearance with George Bush at the White House is the only time he's been on C-SPAN. Just like another Saturday Night Live legend, Chris Farley. He has just one appearance on C-SPAN as well. 1995, when he did his impression of Newt Gingrich, and Newt Gingrich sat right next to Chris Farley, laughing all the way. That's it for this episode of C-SPAN's Extreme Mortman, your new home for clips and quips. Thanks for listening, and happy searching.